Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Hanif Qureshi, IPS. Presently, I am the Commissioner of Police for Faridabad city in Haryana. We are doing the paper on internal security management, and the module we are going to do today deals with the problems of internal security management in India. Now, as you know, that there are a number of threats to the internal security of India, and they have been in existence for quite some time. These threats have been highlighted in national as well as international publications. If you look at the Global Risks Atlas 2012, the atlas lists out several threats for India. For instance, it takes into account terrorism, conflict, resource security, economic security, and aspects of climate change also. It has listed India in a high risk category on security, and it mentions several risk factors, particularly terrorism and political violence. In another international report has been published by the US called the Country Report on Terrorism, and India in that report has been identified as one of the world's most terrorism afflicted countries and one of the most persistently targeted countries by transnational terrorist groups. In the recent period, India has indeed witnessed several terrorist incidents. The nature and scope of the threats faced by India, the internal security threats, are varied and vast. These are the complex threats which India faces. They originate not only within the borders, but the causes for some of these threats lie beyond our borders also. Some of the activities of our neighboring countries, which include China, Bangladesh, and particularly Pakistan, have been a cause of major concern. Some people think that the state of India's internal security is poor, and one of the reasons for that is a weak criminal justice system which fails to adequately punish criminals. But it may also be due to an unfavorable strategic environment. In this module, we will examine the various threats which are faced by India. Now, looking at the threats to internal security which are faced by India, there are a number of them. We have drug trafficking, we have illegal immigration, we have fake currency, and several others. Let us consider drug trafficking first. Drug trafficking is one of the major challenges to internal security in India. In India, there are a lot of illegal drugs which are produced locally in large parts of central India, but also from external sources. The regions from India where illegal drugs are produced, they start from Himachal Pradesh in the north to West Bengal in the south, but a lot of the area falls in the central Indian states. The cause of concern regarding India's internal security situation is the use of drug cartels by terror networks and those who plan subversive activities in India. So, the money which is generated from illegal drugs, it is suggested that more than 25% of the money is spent on terrorist activities in India, and Pakistan's Secret Intelligence Agency ISI promotes the illegal drug and it finances its subversive activities through this profit. According to the Federal Research Division, the most perturbing phenomenon is the connection of drug cartels in smuggling of small arms. Drug cartels are also involved in money laundering. Similar trends have been observed in India, and the number of confiscations of the narcotic drugs in 2011 were more than 10,000 as per the NCRB. Another aspect of threat from the narcotics is drug addiction. If you look at the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime Statistics, in 2004, India had more than 2.3 million cannabis users, followed by 0.6 million opiate users. And the affected persons are mostly youth, which is the most productive section of the population. And these addicts are between the ages of 15 and 35. So, drug addiction is not only a problem by itself as it affects the youth, but it also leads to several harmful consequences. It impairs judgment, leads to family discord, and is an antecedent for increase in the crime rate in the society. If the nexus between drugs and crimes is broken, the crime rate is very likely to decline. Drugs are responsible for a number of crimes in the society. Local police in the states, they are primarily responsible for intercepting and apprehending the illegal drug dealers. At the level of Government of India, we have the Narcotics Control Bureau or the NCB, which is the nodal agency for drug law enforcement, and it also functions as a policy think tank. The other problem which we have is the illegal immigration from Bangladesh into India. It has emerged into a serious internal security problem. Illegal immigration from Bangladesh has led to demographic confusion and has generated very serious political, social and economic tensions in the northeastern states, particularly in Assam, Meghalaya and Tripura. There was a report of a group of ministers on reforming the national security system in 2001. They have said that the problem of illegal immigration is growing and the measures taken by the government have not shown any significant results. Large scale immigration has left local populations in a minority in some areas. Insurgent groups have taken shape. One of the examples of this is the All Tripura Tiger Force ATTF in the state of Tripura. Many of these groups have developed contacts with the anti-India groups like the Bangladesh-based Huji. Huji is a banned organization based in Bangladesh which has vowed to wage war against the elected Bangladesh government, and it engages in killings and other terrorist activities. These separatist groups are funded by some of our enemy countries, particularly Pakistan-based the ISI, which is the Inter-Services Intelligence, that has developed contacts with these anti-India groups and it funds them and helps them. Therefore, this is a serious concern and a serious threat to India's internal security. The other problem of internal security which India faces is the FICN or the fake Indian currency notes. The FICN is used to fund terror networks, drug cartels and to import illicit weapons into the country. Once again, Pakistan is mainly instrumental in pushing fake currency in India, and it uses a number of different routes and means for the purposes. Several countries such as UAE, Nepal and Bangladesh are used as a via media by Pakistan to push fake currency into India. Once the FICN reaches India, it is exchanged for original genuine currency notes in a roughly 2:1 ratio as per several reports. The Indian authorities have seized regularly a large number of FICN notes. Starting from 2006, lakhs and lakhs of illegal currency notes have been confiscated by Indian agencies. But the actual amount of fake currency in India could be much more than what has been actually caught by the agencies. And as has been said earlier, this fake currency has been used to fund terrorist activities in India. Investigations have shown that more than 50 million rupees which were incurred by terrorists who planted a bomb in Hyderabad in 2007 were fake currency. Another attack which happened in Bangalore in the Indian Institute of Science possibly used fake currency. Therefore, fake currency has been used in a number of incidents and the threats of this nature have been detected by Indian law enforcement agencies. Now, apart from these threats which we have discussed till now, India faces three major threats to internal security. These three major threats have worried the nation for a long time now. The first one of this is the left-wing extremism. The second is the situation in the northeastern part of the country, and the third is the terrorism in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Let us look at all these three major threats one by one. First, we will look at the left-wing extremism. Now, extremism became a problem for the internal security situation in India after the famous Naxalbari event in West Bengal. As you would recall, the Naxalbari event was well contained by the government initially. However, after the Naxalbari event, Naxalism continued to grow, albeit intermittently, in various parts of the country, and mostly it has affected the underdeveloped regions of India. At present, large parts of the country are affected by Naxalism in one form or the other. Naxalism is responsible for a large number of deaths of both civilians as well as security forces. Now we look at the causes of Naxalism. So we talk about the displacement of tribals for mining, for dams, for infrastructure projects. Sometimes special economic zones have been established which are responsible for displacing tribals from their lands. There can be some other reasons also for land alienation. It could be the use of forest land for commercial use. There have been various estimates of the numbers of the tribals and others who have been displaced as a result of these projects. Of course, it is acknowledged by the government as well as the scholars that the people who have been affected by displacement have not been always adequately compensated, and their lives have been affected in a manner which were not fully compensated. Therefore, there is a grievance and there is a genuine grievance. Government has tried to talk to the people, it has tried to provide them compensation, tried to provide them jobs, but due to inaccessibility of the area and due to certain other factors, a sort of grievance still remains in the minds of these people. Now, the Maoists who do not believe in democracy and want to achieve their rule through violence, these are the people who contacted such displaced people, and they tried to influence them and join them in their cadres. Therefore, one of the fertile areas of recruitment of the Maoists were these displaced people, and they do not even hesitate to stop the developmental works which are happening in those areas, so that the fruits of the development do not reach this area, and they remain in contact with the Maoists and swell their ranks. If we look at the left wing extremist related incidents, a large number of incidents have been happening over the last several decades, but a declining trend over the last several years has been noticed. If you compare the figures of 2011, about 760 incidents happened, and in 2015 this figure has fallen substantially. If you look at the number of civilian deaths in Naxal related incidents, that also has shown a declining trend over a number of years. The number of security personnel who have died in action fighting against the Maoists has also gone down. However, the number of encounters which the police has, that has more or less kept the same. This indicates that the police are actively pursuing the war against Naxalism, and it has achieved success as far as the number of deaths are concerned. Now, one worrisome aspect of Naxalism is it spread across the length and breadth of India. As you know, the Naxals operated only in Andhra Pradesh in the beginning. However, the Andhra Pradesh government moved swiftly against them, and it spread later on to Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Odisha. After these three states, there are reports that the Naxals are trying to spread into several South Indian and northeastern states also. And it has been seen that the influence of the Naxals is mostly in rural areas or tribal areas. But of late there are reports that the Naxals are trying to penetrate into some of the urban areas also. Though the influence in the urban areas is certainly very less as compared to the tribal and the rural areas. Now, the government has a strategy to deal with the left-wing extremism, and it is a comprehensive strategy because it combines various issues involved such as security, which is the main one, but also development, ensuring rights and settlements of local communities, improvement in governance and also public perception management. But Maoist insurgency has continued to exist and it has also grown in certain pockets. One of the reasons for this may be a lack of a coordinated response or underassessment of the level of threats posed, and also the failure of governance in LWE affected areas. For a long time, the government did not think of LWE as a serious issue, but they perceived it as a local law and order problem. Therefore, the Maoists were able to increase their influence, especially in the forest areas and the tribal areas of states, of particularly Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. And the lack of governance in these areas inadvertently helped the cause of the Naxals. Another challenge faced by the government in reducing the support for Naxalism is the problems of the displaced people, because they had to displace, they had to relocate due to dams or other developmental projects. Since they were not adequately compensated as discussed, the state had a certain amount of failure in providing them adequate care and rehabilitation packages. Here it must be mentioned that adequate care and rehabilitation not only includes financial rehabilitation, but it also has a human component to it. That has been a major irritant in dealing with the problems of unrest in the affected populations. The efforts of the government in many states has brought down the number of insurgency related incidents. As we discussed, Andhra Pradesh had a successful strategy of controlling the terrorists and the Maoists. They had a special unit by the name of Greyhounds which was used to fight the Naxals. Therefore, the combined strength of government policies and police action through Greyhounds that weakened the forces of Naxals greatly in Andhra Pradesh. If you look at the strategy and the mode how the Greyhounds operated, then we see that they had formed certain squads which were very similar to the Naxal squads in organization, and they operated using similar methods. So, the traditional method of policing failed. The Greyhounds is one of the best examples of anti-Naxal and counter-terrorist guerrilla activity anywhere in the country. And this is a model which is now being tried in the states which are still affected by terrorism. For instance, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Jharkhand. The government of Andhra Pradesh is coordinating with these 3 and 4 states to introduce similar methods and similar organization like the Greyhounds to counter the threat of the terrorists. Now let us look at the northeastern part of the country. Northeastern India comprises of the states of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura and Sikkim. Of course, you know these states are also called the Seven Sisters. These Seven Sisters have about 8% of the land surface area of India, and they are home to about 3.7% of the population. This area has several militant groups operating in the region. For instance, the ULFA or the United Liberation Front of Assam. There is also the National Democratic Front of Bodoland, the NDFB in Assam. There is a People's Liberation Army, PLA, and the UNLF, the United National Liberation Front, and the Manipur People's Liberation Front in Manipur. Tripura also a number of organizations are working, and one of them is the All Tripura Tiger Force. In Meghalaya, there is the Achik National Volunteer Council, ANBC, and the Haini National Liberation Council, which is the HNLC. And most of these groups have been banned under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1957. These groups often engage in violence, and they have also targeted civilians apart from the police and military forces. There is the Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958, which has been invoked by the Government of India. This is basically meant to grant functional capability to the army in the area. Apart from the local police, central paramilitary forces have also been deployed in the area. The Government of India has initiated accelerated infrastructure development in the region. It has tried to generate employment and good governance. As the area is remote and it has got unique characteristics on account of the local populations, there has been an emphasis on decentralization. We are talking about good governance. What is good governance? In a democracy, the wishes and desires of people have to be taken into confidence. This is especially true in a remote area such as the Seven Sisters, which have unique characteristics. There are tribal regions and they have their indigenous culture which goes back to centuries. Therefore, the government talks about decentralization. The government has made a number of efforts of decentralization. A lot of powers of central government has been transferred to the state government and from further down to the district level. District councils have been formed and their way of life, their culture is sought to be preserved, and external factors are not supposed to be imposed on them. Apart from decentralization, the government has also initiated ceasefire measures. It has invited all of these groups to come to the table and talk about their problems. Not all, but several of these militant groups have responded to calls for ceasefire and talks with the government. In one of the cases, National Socialist Council of Nagaland, NSCN, both factions, Isaac Muiwa as well as the Kaplang faction, they have entered into ceasefire agreements. Similarly, other groups have also come on the table to talk to the government about the issues they face. Some of these groups demand autonomy due to the unique position of their local populations. The government has responded to these demands and has taken steps in this direction. For instance, the Bodo Territorial Council or the BTC that was created as a result of the Memorandum of Settlement signed in 2003 between the Government of India, the Government of Assam and the then Bodo Liberation Tigers. The government has released funds to be used by the council for development purposes. Therefore, not only the talks have been held, but the talks have actually been used to set up new institutions which will be responsible for carrying out a part of the governance in these intractable and forest areas. If this process continues, we can really hope that not only the wishes and desires of the local people will be taken into consideration, but as a result of harmonious interaction between the state government, the district level functionaries and the central government, a positive atmosphere will be generated and the fruits of development can reach the people. Now, let us look at another irritant towards the internal security situation, which is the issue being faced in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. If we look at the genesis of the problem of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, we see that it lies in the refusal of Pakistan to accept the state's accession to India. Even today, Pakistan continues to illegally occupy parts of the state's territory. It was decided between Pakistan and India that the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, along with some other issues, will be decided bilaterally between the two countries. However, Pakistan does not agree to it now. It has failed to keep on this commitment. Through its military intelligence wing, the ISI, Pakistan has used its army regulars, irregulars, jihadists and others to launch terrorist attacks on India. It so-called wishes to liberate Jammu and Kashmir. And Pakistan has used radical Islamic groups, drug syndicates, counterfeit currency and other subversive tactics for this purpose. It wants to replicate the Afghan model in Pakistan and transform the situation in Kashmir to a global jihad. The trend of violence which we have seen in the state of Jammu Kashmir reveals that there has been a decline in the violence from the times of the peak of 1997 and then 2002 to the current day. There are many militant outfits operating in the state which have been banned by the state government and the central government. One of them is the Jaish-e-Mohammed, there is also the Lashkar-e-Taiba, LET and the Hizbul Mujahideen. Some others like the Harkatul Mujahideen and the Dukhtarane Millat are also the others which are the banned organizations. The Government of India pursues a strategy to bring normalcy to the state and to develop its economic potential, which was based on tourism to a large extent. The security forces proactively tackle cross-border terrorism. The security forces deployed in the state of Jammu and Kashmir include not only the army but also BSF to a great extent, and the Central Reserve Police Force, which is very instrumental and also very successful in tackling the local terrorism. The Government of India has also raised the India Reserve Battalions or the IRBs recently, which are raised by taking contribution of 50-50 from the states and the central government. These IR battalions are also deployed in Jammu and Kashmir to tackle various security related issues. The intelligence apparatus of India is working to deactivate the ISI created elements which are functioning in India still. Many Pakistani youths have been trained by the ISI and they have been clandestinely sent to India as a part of covert operation to support the terrorist activities in India. Apart from within India, the ISI also attempts to launch anti-India spying and seditious and sabotage networks in Bangladesh, Nepal, Middle East and other countries. The security forces in Jammu and Kashmir, they have adopted several strategies to counter the militant activity. The government provides for better technology, gadgetry and gear for the local police, the CRPF, BSF and also the modernization and strengthening of the local police, because they are the ones who ultimately have to fight the terrorist elements which sometimes hide in the local population. And therefore, the police is expected to take the lead role in the direct anti-terrorism operations. The people of Jammu and Kashmir are being involved through volunteer village defense committees so that they can help the security forces. A massive project of fencing of the international border and increasing surveillance on the line of control has also been carried out by the Government of India. Now, if we look at the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, we see that a large number of security forces are operating. As said earlier, they include the army, the CRPF, the BSF, the local police, the India Reserve battalions, and there is a need for a coordination between these various agencies. For this purpose, the state government has set up the unified headquarters, the UHQs which are located in Jammu. The UHQs are state level coordination committees and they are headed by the CM, the Chief Minister, and they include the Chief Secretary, the Corps Commanders of the Army, BSF, CRPF and senior officers of the state police and administration. Most operations of security forces concerning militant activities are planned and completed by these UHQs. The Government of India also supplements the efforts of the state to enhance economic development, which can provide better employment avenues as well as to have a better standard of living for the people of the state. The central government coordinates the implementation of various government programs of Jammu and Kashmir through a standing committee headed by the Cabinet Secretary with representation from all concerned central ministries. There are several infrastructure related development projects. One of these projects is the Jammu Udhampur and the Udhampur Srinagar rail link. The NHPC or the National Hydroelectric Power Corporation has several power projects and several national highways have been planned throughout the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Therefore, we see that in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, not only security related apparatus has been strengthened, but also developmental works have been targeted. And for this, there is an effective coordination of the state government as well as the central government. In conclusion, we can say that the internal security situation in India remains precarious. There have been gains in several areas like the reduction of the Naxal threat in Andhra Pradesh, but then there have been reverses also. For instance, increase in Naxalism in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. There has to be more effort at establishing a unified command and sharing of intelligence and action. After the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York in September 2001, the USA revamped its entire security infrastructure and created a Department of Homeland Security. It also created an institution, the Director of National Intelligence. These institutions together bring expertise from various domains and provide a unified and a comprehensive counter attack whenever needed. Of course, India is a very diverse country and the nature of threat varies from one state to the other state. The help of state governments has to be taken in case of India, and the governments at both center and state levels must come together and establish a strong counter-terrorist establishment. Now, let us have a summary of what we have discussed in this module. At the starting of this module, we looked at the geopolitical context of India and tried to understand the various internal security threats it faces. We examined several issues which are related to the internal security problem. For instance, drug trafficking, illegal immigration and fake currency notes or FICN. The classical division of the internal security threats treats three major issues faced by India. The first is the issue of Naxalism or left-wing extremism. This exists mostly in the tribal areas of the central Indian states. The problem of militancy in the northeast was examined subsequently. There were issues of displacement of tribals which were taken undue advantage by vested interests who revolted against the state. The government took steps for development as well as strengthened the security apparatus in the affected regions. Thus, positive improvement in situation has been observed. But of course, there needs much more to be done. And the last threat we examined for internal security was the problem of militancy in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. We saw that Pakistan supports militancy in the state. The government has taken several steps due to which militancy is on the decline in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you for watching.